More now on that breaking news we were just bringing you a few minutes ago. A court in Germany has given its verdict in the case of a 97-year-old woman who was accused of complicity in the Holocaust. This was Irmgard Furchner, who has now been given a 2-year suspended sentence. She had worked as a secretary at the Stutthof concentration camp in what is now Poland. Let's talk a bit more now about this with our Europe regional editor, Paul Moss, who's been following the story. Extraordinary story, really, Paul.
It is.
97 years of age.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it got more extraordinary as it went on. She was caught all these years later, living in an old people's home in Germany. One little detail, she managed to escape at one point. She actually evaded the people who were trying to put her on trial and got as far as Hamburg before she was recaptured. Yeah, as you said, she was a secretary when she was a teenager in the last couple of years of the war at the Stutthof concentration camp near what is now Gdansk. And the prosecution argument was that by being there, by doing that work, she made the operation run smoothly, and it was an operation which left 65,000 people dead. The inmates were Jews, as was so often the case in concentration camps, but also Polish and Russian partisans. And indeed, there were some Norwegians there who'd refused to cooperate in the occupation of their country. And yeah, the prosecution case, that by being there, by working there, she was partially responsible for what happened.
And what happened then during the course of this trial, and what was her defence?
She stayed quiet most of the time. She stayed silent in the court. And the defence argument was that, quite simply, she didn't know what was going on at the camp. She was, a secretary, nothing more than that. The prosecution say this was ludicrous. 65,000 people being either murdered or dying of the various diseases. You may be aware that it was been a common defence of Nazis who were caught after the war. We didn't know. So she had trouble arguing that case, and indeed it seems that the court hasn't accepted her argument and did indeed hold her responsible. And, I think it says something about the scale, doesn't it, of the Holocaust. This was a relatively small camp. Only, and I say that in quotes, only 65,000 people died there.
She's a very old lady. She's 97 years old. She is now facing a 2-year sentence, but suspended. So it's not very likely to be enforced, presumably. But I suppose it does demonstrate symbolically that age is no barrier to justice.
I think the word symbolically you're using is perfect. This was clearly a symbolic trial to establish something. The prosecution described it as a historic trial for several reasons. One argument being this could be the last trial of its kind. I mean, we're talking about events that happened 80 years ago. The vast majority of the victims and the perpetrators are long dead. It was a chance for the victims, those who are still alive, to provide testimony in court, and indeed that dominated the proceedings, given that she was silent. They talked about the suffering that went on there. Right at the end, Irmgard Furchner said she was sorry about what happened, and she was sorry about the fact that she was at the camp but didn't admit her guilt. I think also what's interesting, to me, this case in some ways reflects the modern way we see the Holocaust. People think of the perpetrators as, sadistic guards beating people to death, forcing them into the gas chambers. But the Holocaust was an extraordinary bureaucratic operation. 9 million people were murdered. This takes some organising. There were the people who arranged the trains, the people who commissioned the building work for the gas chamber. All of this, and more, it's seen as a great bureaucratic process in which many, many people played their role. And so by prosecuting a secretary, to me this was emphasising that aspect of it, that many, many were complicit, perhaps not those who were so obviously so. As you say, giving a 97-year-old woman a 2-year suspended sentence, she's not going to be going to prison anytime soon, I suspect. They were trying to make a symbolic point, and they've made it.
Yeah. Absolutely fascinating. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Paul Moss there, our Europe regional editor. Thank you.